everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to do my bracket for the June Joust. Yes, it is bracket time, baby. We have the 4 teams that have made it to the June Joust Tournament. The NYXL taking on the Atlanta Reign in round 1. Dallas Fuel taking on the Shanghai Dragons in round 1. Should be a pretty interesting and pretty good tournament. We'll see what happens. So today we're just going to go through, I'm going to give you my predictions for the bracket, talk about things, kind of do it live. I like doing that with these bracket videos, so that is what this one is. So let's just jump into it. Let's start with the first series, which is the NYXL taking on the Atlanta Reign. I think it's an interesting one, just the way seedings and stuff work. These are the two teams that are facing off for this one. I think these are the 2 weakest teams in the tournament. So just the fact that Atlanta ends up being the higher seeded team is kind of ironic. So it's an interesting matchup, I think, and it's one that I'm looking at very, very closely, because the thing that we kind of saw from both of these teams is a favoring of the Orisa composition. Different style of Orisa compositions, though, obviously. The NYXL against the Spark ran a lot of Orisa Zarya. They ran a couple of times, the Orisa Diva. And I think they may have run a very little bit of Double Shield, but they ran a lot of Orisa Zarya into the double bubble that the Hangzhou Spark were running. Now, whether or not that was kind of like a selective type of composition that they built and designed specifically for the Spark, I don't know. Whether or not that's the type of composition they want to play, I'm not really sure. I like Bianca Zarya a lot. I think Yakpung's Orisa was decent, so I wouldn't be opposed to them wanting to continue running that composition. They did not opt to run Echo as much as a lot of other teams did, even like Atlanta, who runs a lot of the Orisa compositions. Orisa Diva, I believe, is what they liked to run a lot. The Reign were running a lot of Echo. They were running kind of the Echo McCree with Kai and Pelican, or Pelican and Kai, I guess, technically, because those are the ones who are playing those heroes. They run very similar DPS compositions, though, or support compositions, sorry, the Brig Baptiste, both of these teams. But the difference really kind of came in with the off-tank role and then that DPS pick. New York wanted to run the Reaper and the McCree a lot of the time. They did run Echo sometimes, not they never ran Echo. They would put Feather on the Echo at times, but it seemed like for the most part they wanted to run that Reaper. But Atlanta also has shown us other compositional looks that give me some kind of faith in what they can do. They looked pretty good when they would run the Winston compositions, any type of like double bubble compositions or anything of that sort, like the Moira Neo Goats type compositions. They ran that against the Shock and the Uprising and looked pretty competent on it. And so New York, to me, this team that really seems very one-dimensional, only seems to really have one composition they like to run, and arguably are not even the best team at running that composition, it's hard for me to think New York is going to have a ton of advantage in the series. Now, with a system where it is loser's pick, I think New York does have some opportunities to give themselves advantages, right? But when you are up against a team like Atlanta, you have to be able to think about those types of advantages in a very intelligent way. New York has done very well in Junkertown so far in June. They did a lot of, a couple times they played that. Like they played Seoul on that map, but Guangzhou on that map, and they won both times. They went 3-1 in both of those series, or 1-3 in both of those series, with one map win, and it was Junkertown both times. And on those maps, they were running Guangbong on the Widow, and they were running Ivy on the Genji, so they have some other looks that they can pull out at certain points and certain times in series. And so maybe that's something we'd like to see them kind of force, where they maybe try to do that every so often, try to get these map picks where they can run kind of weird compositions. But I don't know how much success that would find against Atlanta. The reality is that Atlanta, they look a lot better, and Atlanta has looked like a very good team at taking fights at the perfect time and disengaging properly. When they played the Shock, I was incredibly impressed by the way the Atlanta Reign would disengage from those Coalescence fights and how they would kind of spread out if need be, and how they would kind of force positioning mistakes. I mean, if you look at the series against the Shock and the way they played Hanamura, that was basically just the Shock couldn't push in a normal way because Kai was just set up on an angle where he would just pick you off if you tried to push in. And as much as I think Gwangbun has looked good and Flores looked really good, right? Like, there are some really talented players in the NYXL. I don't feel like the level is the same, even if they're running mirror compositions. And New York, to me, just isn't as strong. I will give New York a map. I think that it won't be a complete rolling in the sense of like a sweep. It might be. Like, there is a chance it could be, but I think that New York is capable of taking a map. I think New York has some certain looks that they can definitely pull out that would be very good. And I think the best chance that New York has of winning a game in this series, and the best chance they have of doing anything really, is getting a win off of Atlanta, right? If they can take a win off of Atlanta, they put themselves in a much better position where then they have at least a little bit of leeway where they know they're guaranteed a point to their overall standings. That helps them potentially kind of look forward and say, how do we then prepare for a team like Dallas or Shanghai? Where, as we move on to that Dallas versus Shanghai match, these are two teams that are very interesting to me for very specific reasons. Dallas has run this Neo Goats composition, and that's it. That's all they can really run. And one of the problems that happens when you are a one-dimensional, in kind of air quotes, team, where you can only really run one composition, you run into an issue where if a team figures that composition out, you're kind of screwed. If you look back at last season with the Washington Justice, when they made their playoff run, teams didn't really figure out how to beat their composition, right? They didn't figure out how to adapt in a way that they could kind of find success against the composition. The Shock struggled against it, managed to pull off the reverse sweep. But when the Fusion figured out an answer, it wasn't even a close series, right? Like, the Fusion just completely obliterated the Justice after they were trying to run that Zarya and Hog composition. There was nothing they could do about it because they didn't know what to do anymore because they had not met resistance, right? And they didn't have the flexibility to try to run other compositions. But Dallas is a very elite level team, right? They have some really talented players that can run pretty much anything you would want them to run. And it allows them to force this composition in a way that's very, very good. I'm curious to see how this Neo Goats composition will work against Shanghai. One, will Shanghai try to mirror the composition? Because we've seen Fate have some pretty good success in Winston so far this season. I think that they are, of course, a very talented team. They've already played Dallas twice in the May Melee, so they at least have some kind of idea of what they're going up against here. And if I'm the Dragons, I don't want to lose 3 times to the Fuel. Are you kidding me? That would be awful. So Shanghai has a tough task ahead of them because they know that Dallas is going to run this comp, right? And they're really, really good at it. What Shanghai has the benefit of is they really have the time to kind of adapt their compositions. They could try to play the Neo Goats composition. I think it works. They could also try to play double shield or the kind of New York style, Atlanta style comp, which is, sometimes like a Diva instead of a Sigma. Run the Echo, run the McCree, and try to kind of counter what the Fuel are doing and run this composition that's meant to kind of stop these aggressive pushes and aggressive attacks from the Fuel. It's hard to do that because the Fuel are incredibly aggressive and they're incredibly good at reading aggression, but it will be interesting to see. The other possibility in the way that you can try to stop the Dallas Fuel right now is to try to force them onto maps where those compositions are not as viable and where you can enable long-range hit scan players to set up. Pine is not with this Dallas Fuel team yet, and while it is, I guess, technically possible that because the teams are playing between Hawaii and Korea, or I guess in Shanghai's case, Hawaii and China, it is possible that you could put Pine in and just have him playing from Korea, but that seems like kind of a waste and not a great idea considering he has not scrimmed with the team yet. So it doesn't really make sense for Pine to play at all in the actual series, even though he probably could. So we'll see him in the Widow 1v1, but that's really all we can expect from him. So I think it's tough to say for sure where this one goes, because we know what Dallas is going to do, right? Like, we know exactly what Dallas is going to run. Dallas is going to run this Neo Goats composition. What Shanghai is able to pull out, I don't know, and what they want to run, I don't know. So it feels like a pretty clear-cut win for the Dallas Fuel. Probably a close series. I'm going to say a 3-2. I do think Shanghai is very good. I think they do have the possibility to kind of push them and make this a close one, but I am going to go the way of the Dallas Fuel for this one. I'll do the Atlanta Reign versus Dallas Fuel next. Like I said with the Atlanta Reign with the NYXL series, the way the Atlanta Reign are able to disengage from fights and aggressive fights is particularly impressive. I think that it is one of the best things that we've seen from the Atlanta Reign so far in the June Joust. But to me, the Dallas Fuel are still a favorite. I think there is a very good chance that the Reign can beat the Fuel. And in a way, I actually feel like Shanghai, I feel more confident in their ability based on the caliber of the team and the caliber of the coaching staff and the caliber of their roster. Atlanta, I feel confident in their ability to stop it based on their composition and the way they play it. Like, for Shanghai's type of thing of, like, I don't know if they can stop it based on the way that they've played in the past. It doesn't really seem like they've matched anything like it or met anything like it, so that'll be difficult. But Atlanta has, and I think Atlanta's play style should, in a way, be decent against Dallas, but I just don't see it being enough. Now, if you can enable Kai in ways where he can just play Ashe or play Widow and is able to be pretty safe and protected and just sit back and just pick off players, that is a big thing. If you think about like the Dallas Fuel against the LA Gladiators, I believe was the series where the Gladiators almost full held the Fuel on Junkertown, but a couple mistakes were the things that made the difference, that really enabled the Fuel to be able to push that cart to the finish line. I may be misremembering series. They all kind of blend together in my head at this point in time. But Kai is that level of player. He can just win you a series. So you got to be able to enable Kai, I think. I think this series should be pretty good, but I do think it's a 3-1 in favor of the Fuel. They just look too good. Reign just don't look very strong right now. Well, I take that back. Reign do look strong, but I don't know if they've looked strong enough to be able to fully counter that Fuel aggression that we have seen, and so I'm going to give the Fuel the advantage there. NYXL will take on the Shanghai Dragons in this scenario. I love New York. They're my team. I love these rookies. I love a lot of the guys that they've put on this team. They have been so bad against Shanghai for the past 2 years. They have won like 3 maps against Shanghai over the course of the past 2 seasons. 2 of those maps were in 1 game. It's just not a great matchup for them. It's just, obviously last year the roster was different, but the talent level, it's just such a different gap. And Shanghai knows New York well enough already. They know how to beat them. They've scrimmed against them, I'm sure. They've scrimmed for them several times. I don't think this series will be particularly close. I would expect them to play very similar compositions. Shanghai is better on them. Shanghai takes that series. Sorry, New York. I love you guys. I want you to win the whole thing. I really do. But I just don't see it happening based on what I've seen so far. Shanghai Dragons versus Atlanta Reign. To me, this would be a banger of a series. This would be a beautiful, beautiful match because I think this is such a great poetry-level series between 2 teams that I think have really shown themselves to have an understanding of how to play this meta, but in different ways, right? Shanghai and Atlanta both like these Orisa comps. They both like the way that they work. But obviously, Atlanta is playing to counter these Neo Goats compositions that you have in NA, while Shanghai has been basically countering double bubble or other double shield compositions. So the clash will be interesting to see. Atlanta is not, in my opinion, as built to take on a Shanghai, right? To me, Atlanta's style and the way we've seen them succeed so far would work better against the Dallas than it would have Shanghai. But Shanghai's not as strong of an opponent as Dallas, and I think that there's a very real possibility that we would see Atlanta push this Dragons team, because I actually think that Pelican and Kai arguably have been better this, at least in June, than Lip and Fleta have. I know Fleta's the reigning MVP, and I know Lip has looked very good on hit scan, but at least if you're playing like Ash, I'm taking Kai, man. And Kai and Pelican, I think, can definitely get that DPS advantage in a way that would help them a lot. And I think it would be a really great way to see these two teams kind of clash, would be that difference. But I just don't know if the Atlanta Reign have the star power and, more importantly, the experience to get themselves over a really strong Shanghai Dragons team. The Atlanta Reign are a team that I don't really think are a no stage too big type of team. They have a very kind of carefree attitude, or not so much carefree, a very prideful attitude, but not in a negative way, in a way that they believe in themselves no matter what. They can lose a series pretty badly and come back the next week and they will just dominate you, and they will always think that they can do anything because they have confidence. I guess that's the word. They're a very confident team, and a very positively confident team. And so I think the Atlanta Reign are not going to just, bow down to any team like the Shanghai Dragons. I think it's close. I think it's a good series. I ultimately think the Dragons will take this one. I will say a 3-2, though. I think there is a possibility for a good compositional matchup for this one, but I think the Shanghai Dragons take this one. Then we get to the grand finals. I already talked about the Fuel taking on the Dragons once before. Who knows what the compositions will look like? I think it's hard to know for sure. But based on what happened the last time around, Fuel, I think, just level up once you get to that 4-map series. They seem to do better. It was a 4-2 last time. I'm going to go with a 4-2 this time because I am a creature of habit, and I believe that things will always happen the same way, even when it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I think the Fuel are the most likely team to win this tournament. I think they should be the favorites. They just seem to have a level of play that nobody else in the league has right now, and for that reason, pretty much alone, I think the Dallas Fuel will take this one. So there's about the best look I can give you at the bracket. You can tell what it is. It's mostly there. I can zoom out a little bit. Hold on a second. Wait. I'm not going to zoom out. I take that back. I'm just kidding. I'm zooming out. There you go. Did this help? This helps. There we go. Now you can see it. So there's the bracket. There you go. That's what I think is going to happen. Am I going to be wrong? Probably. I usually am. But I feel much better about this one than I did with the May Melee. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping my boys in blue, but not the Dallas blue, the New York blue. I'm hoping they pull through. But I guess we'll see. But that's it for today. That's it for this one. Can't wait for tomorrow for these matches to kick off. They're going to be fun. They're going to be exciting. They're going to be great. And yeah, so that's all for me. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more like it in the future. Comment down below your thoughts on my bracket. Who you think's going to win the whole thing? What you think the score is going to be? Anything like that. I'd love to hear from you. But I'm going to get out of here now. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.